There's clearly training implications, and who's going to do that, and who's going to do all the kind of setting up, and how are we going to create this, and there's a really demand, and it's it's a very bespoke kind of activity, but across the university there may not, certainly 2 years ago, similar level of demand to want to do this.
Can I just think of the demand also being a very centralised IT department within the university. Obviously, one of the things we've got to be is try to be cost effective as possible. So if somebody comes to us and say, can you make this huge investment in making this thing work? I'll say, well, who else wants it? Nobody. Right, okay.
We are trying to, and there is interest. We did as part of once we got the Jisc Infonet funding and we started to look at the wiki issue, and as I'll come back to in a minute, we were very much looking at open source software. It was part of the bid was that we were going to move away from attempting to find solutions to the problems of having this online student collaboration with business partners that maintained the integrity of everybody's technical infrastructures, but to use open source software. And that was to be the challenge, but it also got us around some of the licensing issues. And we first of all started with a bit of software called Plone. I won't say a great deal about it. I'm sure that the students may well have something to say about Plone this afternoon, and I'm sure Eric's got a lot to say about Plone. Suffice to say that Plone, after one semester, was dumped, and we moved on to WordPress. And again, I think both from a technical perspective, from the security's perspective, and from the student's perspective, WordPress was much more effective in creating an online wiki for the students to collaborate with the business partners in a secure way. And that's that really was. Skype. God, don't talk about Skype.
Yeah, shall I do Skype?
You can do Skype. Yeah.
As you can imagine, look of horror when Skype was suggested, particularly when you talk to networking teams, say, I want to put Skype everywhere, and they just basically fall over into a dead fade. There is a lot of hype about Skype, about how bad it is, and it is true that its traffic is encrypted, and that really scares our networks team because they can never examine what's coming down your wire, and therefore how do they know it's safe or not. And also the actual communications protocol where things like MSN say this packet does that and that piece of information does that. Skype, because it's a commercial, saying no, we're not going to tell you. And there is a risk that, yes, that is true, that if you don't really know what you're doing, you don't have a secure PC, it will turn your PC into kind of routing system for the rest of the world, which you don't really want. So what we'll do then is we'll try and de-risk it. We've got a wireless network across all of the campus. So we decided to have a special wireless network set up just for doing that. That seemed to go okay, but it was a bit restricted because basically saying if you want to use Skype, you have to use a laptop and you either connect to the main wireless network or the Skype network, and that was a bit restricted. So we moved it onto the wireless network across the piece, and that seems to be working okay. The world hasn't come to an end at Northumbria. And now we are seriously, well, we've actually got it in test in the design school where it's actually on the main wireless, the main network there. Again, the world hasn't come to an end, and we're very now close to saying, right, okay, let's just let Skype across the whole of our institutional network. It doesn't seem to be that much of a problem. In fact, it doesn't seem to be a problem at all.
And it would get around from the student's perspective. When it was on its dedicated network, they could Skype, but they couldn't also look at documents at the same time. Getting it onto a mainstream network enables them to have more than one application open, and it addresses some of the limitations that the students may well would talk about this afternoon.
One of the other things is sharing documents. How does one person send somebody else a document? And there's this technical term, FTP, file transfer protocol, which is an easy way of transferring files between institutions. But because it's very open, if you say, right, okay, I'm going to allow this machine to accept these kind of connections, then basically anything can connect through to it. There is a secure version of it, but even so, it's still quite a risky one that we don't particularly want to do.
I mean, I think it's fair to say at the moment that's something that the project didn't find a solution to, in terms of facilitating file sharing in a safe, secure way. So whilst we were trying to do that, we didn't find the solution. That's something else.
Space is always a problem, yeah.
Do you mean whilst you were actually on like a Skype call or something
No,
like that to do it, or do you just mean even outside of that
Just
kind of
outside of
environment?
it, yes. Things like a student might say, I've got this idea, I've put it in a video, does everyone see it? And so how do they actually get it to each other?
Right.
Kind of thing. And
In
again,
a
it's got to be
yeah.
secure.
In a secure way
In a
rather
secure
than
way, yes.
through YouTube or
That's right, because you remember there's the commercial sensitivities, right? So in terms of security, we're talking about this has got to be done in a secure, locked down, in that sense, environment.
You don't want a phone call from Intel.
Say Motorola's stolen our idea, or Dell's stolen our idea. Yeah.
So I've just seen it on the telly, the top 3. Instant messenger, so a bit of a chat. Again, look, there is the instant messenger, but we didn't really like that with the internal network, so we actually in the end went for an external version of it. An internal version of it. Which took a while to actually, it worked very well internally, do instant chat internally, we didn't externally, and now it does. So again, the barrier's been broken down there, so we can do instant message chats between ourselves and anybody else in the world using different systems.
Just need an email address, basically, to invite them in.
Right.
This is so the project. I mean, we've probably covered a lot of this. This is what we wanted to do as part of this Jisc funding stream. Was to find tools that could facilitate this collaboration, enable secure exchange of information, could be embedded safely into the university's IT infrastructure, and we could have effective collaboration both between students, with staff, and with business partners. We kind of, this is the whole range of looking for Web 2 technologies. I mean, we've mentioned things like, we've mentioned Plum, we've mentioned WordPress, but there was quite extensive scoping getting us to even to the point of starting to actually use Plum. It wasn't just something plucked out of the air. And kind of, in the, on here you can kind of see, well, we were trying to set up in the red, what is it we were trying to set up? We haven't said a great deal about interactive whiteboard technology. Well, we haven't said anything about it so far. It was something, again, another way for collaboration is having whiteboards that students in different locations with business partners could actually collaborate on in real time. And really, we quickly discovered the cost of that was just too prohibitive to even start to think about could it be done safely and securely. So whilst it's a very interesting idea, within the timescale and with the funding and other monies available, that wasn't feasible. But other things in the red, it's sort of 2009, the start of the project, things that we wanted to do, and as we moved into this year, you can start seeing the green, the things that we've achieved. So we've kind of, the wikis and the blogs come through the WordPress and the functionality that WordPress provides. As Jen said, we've got the instant messaging facility, and we've got Skype working here.
Sorry, one more question. When you're saying you're using WordPress, are you using it actually as an installation on your university network, or are you using it kind of external? And so how do you deal with, so people aren't authenticating in though, so you've got it?
How it works, yeah, it's set up as self-enrollment,
Okay.
and then Ben every so often just checks who's in there. He's got a list of all the students and staff who should be using it, so he just periodically checks are the right people on there who should be. But the link is quite deeply buried. You know, it's very unlikely. Well, nobody as yet has kind of got themselves on there, enrolled into it, who shouldn't be a legitimate user.
Chris, that does raise an interesting issue though, because that's for a fairly small cohort. When you start putting that out across the institution, you know, like they might be able to manage
It does.
manage
I mean,
it
then
for
you've got to
that
start
group,
like,
but,
you see, the problem is
manage it for everybody kind of thing.
Because one of the technical problems, of course, is finding you, with all these different partners, you've got different databases being used locally for authentication purposes. Every university's got a student database that will, that they use to authenticate. So, and people don't want to be sharing those databases for very valid reasons. So the alternative would be to lock it down, and somebody would have to manually enroll cohorts of students and other users. So that's got a resource implication. And the reason why we went for self-enrolment was because the numbers were relatively low, and it kind of spread the work, and it just required some Ben, in this case, just keeping an eye on it, kind of a light touch, managing that, and providing all the other technical support for it. I don't want to say too much, Ben, because Eric's probably going to talk about it this afternoon, but setting up and maintaining WordPress is not difficult. Their support's very good, and it's very reliable. It's a good piece of open source software. It does what it wants to do very effectively. But you're right. I mean, in terms of for institutional use, yes, fine, we could integrate it with our student database. That wouldn't be a problem. It's when you want to do this external collaboration that creates the challenges. If that's the right term, you'll find different ways, and may not necessarily be able to automate certain processes that you can internally automate.
Well, I must say, from my point of view, when I was first introduced or when I got involved with this project, I thought there would actually be something available to do all these kind of things anyway. And all we want to do is communicate, talk with each other, chat, share documents. Surely you can just go out and get somewhere, and you can't. There isn't. Well, certainly, as we speak today, I don't know that it's a popular one, a market leading one, but such a thing doesn't really exist, and I was quite surprised. So you do have to say, right, where all these bits I can bolt together, and that was actually quite a surprise to me.
I mean, I think really we've gone through a process. We've tested tools. We found which work, and using open source software, and have found some solutions to the problems that we had at the start of the project. We looked at some softwares and which we rejected, we've adopted, and we've been able to implement them and maintain the integrity of not only Northumbria's infrastructure, but all the other partners' IT infrastructure. So in that respect, we've had success, but as you can see from the previous slide, there were certain functionalities that I'm sure the students would like, which at this point in time, we haven't found a solution. So the story that we've got to tell at this point is not the book. It's a series of chapters in the book in that sense, because it's a journey that is not yet being completed.
Yes, one of the restrictions on the project was everything's got to be free. It's either got to be freely downloadable or freely available. I think one of the conclusions I've come to is you can do all of these things, but somebody somewhere has to pay for something, even if it's just the hosting of the information, the hosting of the storage. Because even some of the free online, because people like Microsoft and Google give you free space, but they don't allow you to store any kind of files, only certain types of files. So therefore there's a restriction there. But for me, that doesn't mean to say the whole thing hasn't worked. I think it has worked, and I think if an institution wants to do something like this, then they should be prepared to say, well, we're going to commit to this, therefore I'm going to commit this amount of storage, this amount of server infrastructure, this amount of network traffic, rather than say, right, okay, we'll let all that traffic through to that area. But it does mean a commitment from the institution, but I think it's well worth doing.
One of the key lessons is you get your head of IT involved in the project, right? Yeah. So that person actually understands what's trying to be done and can see the value, because it's fair to say that you've been quite a significant broker in enabling change that neither I nor Eric would have been able to achieve, or certainly not to be able to achieve in the time scales that we have of what we've achieved. And that's probably it. Right. Well, are there any other questions? Any people have anything else? Okay. Thank you very much. I think lunch beckons.
Yeah.